Morning light slipped between the blinds of the Seoul penthouse, drawing pale gold lines across marble floors and the soft gray of the couch. The space was elegant, immaculate, too still for a home that had known violence the night before. The faint hum of the city pressed at the glass walls, distant and unreal. Within, the silence felt absolute, the kind that followed chaos and dared you to breathe. Young Jae-won stirred on the couch, his mind surfacing from fractured dreams. The weight of his body reminded him he was alive, though barely rested. His hand brushed against the edge of the cushion, where his gun should have been. Empty. His eyes opened fully. He sat up slowly, gaze scanning the room, every sense tuned to a world that never allowed true quiet. A sound interrupted the stillness, soft, deliberate. Porcelain against marble. Then the low ripple of running water. Domestic sounds, the kind that didn't belong in a place like this. He turned his head toward the kitchen. She stood there. A woman, small against the light, dark hair spilling over her shoulders. Her back was to him at first, but even from that angle he saw the tension in her stance, the careful, deliberate stillness of someone trying not to tremble. Her hands were wrapped around a cup, as if anchoring herself. When she turned slightly, daylight washed over her face, and he saw the truth of it. Fear hidden behind composure, strength held by a thread. Then he noticed what she was wearing. His shirt, the white silk one, loose, falling past her thighs, the fabric catching light like water. On him, it meant control, business, power, the weight of command. On her, it looked like a mistake, an intrusion, or perhaps a claim neither of them had agreed to. For a moment, the world held still between them. She didn't speak. Neither did he. The air hummed with something raw and volatile, more dangerous than the gun still tucked under the couch. Jae-won leaned back, studying her, the corner of his mouth tightening. Not with curiosity, but recognition. He had seen this before. The fragile calm after a life-altering decision. "You're still here," he said finally, voice low, controlled. "Good. That means you understand what last night cost." The words cut through the quiet. She froze, the cup still in her hands, a faint tremor betraying her calm. He rose from the couch, the movement unhurried but commanding. His gaze stayed fixed on her, not cruel, not kind, just absolute. "You saw something you shouldn't have," he continued, closing the space between them until the light divided them evenly. "That means you belong to the Soul Dragon now." The sentence landed like a verdict. Raven's breath caught, the truth settling over her like cold iron. He hadn't saved her last night. He had claimed her. The city after midnight hummed like a body half asleep, neon arteries pulsing through glass and rain. Raven Scott pushed her cleaning cart down a hallway that smelled of citrus polish and money. The tower's floors gleamed beneath her shoes. Each step reflected back at her like proof that she still existed. She worked fast, always did. The supervisors liked her because she never spoke, never lingered, never asked for favors. Tonight was her third shift this week at the Soul Dragon corporate offices, a place too clean to feel human. She wiped the last pane of glass, the motion automatic, mind counting the hours until morning. Rent, remittance, hospital bills. She measured her life in payments made and nights survived. Independence was her religion. No one had ever given her anything she hadn't bled for. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hiss of the floor buffer. Then another sound. A man's voice, low and impatient, drifting from the conference room. A second voice answered, rough with panic. Raven froze. She was supposed to be alone on this floor. Curiosity betrayed her. She edged closer, mop handle tight in her grip. Through the narrow gap of the door she saw two men. One standing, one kneeling. The standing man's suit was immaculate, his expression colder than the marble underfoot. "You broke the agreement," he said softly in Korean. The kneeling man's reply was a sob. A single gunshot ended it. Raven gasped. The door creaked. The shooter's head snapped up, eyes like gunmetal locking on hers. "Hey!" She ran. The hallway stretched endless, lights flashing red in her vision. She slammed the elevator button, cursed its delay, and bolted for the service stairs. Her breath tore in her chest. Somewhere behind her, shoes struck marble in measured rhythm. Someone who knew he didn't have to hurry. She burst into the sublevel corridor, heart stuttering, almost to the back exit when another shadow detached itself from the wall. He didn't move fast, he didn't need to. The man was tall, lean, tattoos coiling up the side of his neck. His gaze was calm, almost curious. "Enough, Han-soo," he said without turning his head. The footsteps behind her stopped. The shooter, Hansu, appeared, gun raised. She saw everything, boss. Raven flattened against the wall, chest heaving. Boss. The words slid through her like ice. The newcomer looked at her fully then, eyes unreadable. What's your name? She couldn't speak. Hansu's finger tightened on the trigger. We can't. I said enough. The voice was quiet, final. Hansu lowered the weapon, jaw tight. Young Jae-won stepped closer, the faint scent of smoke and expensive cologne folding around her. You're not supposed to be here, he said. I was just cleaning, she managed. You saw something that doesn't exist. Raven shook her head. I didn't see anything. His eyes softened almost imperceptibly. Then it should be easy to forget. He turned to Hansu. Get the car. What about her? She's coming with us. Raven backed away, palms raised. Please, I swear I won't. You won't, he agreed. Because you'll stay silent, and I'll make sure of it. When he reached for her wrist, his grip was firm but not cruel. She felt the strength there, the control. The world around them blurred. Lights, noise, air. All swallowed by the decision he made in that single movement. They took the freight elevator down, the metal cage rattling. Raven stared at the floor, trying not to tremble. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere left to go. Jae-won stood beside her, composed, hands in his pockets. Not a rescuer. Not a villain. Something more dangerous. A man who decided who lived and who didn't. Outside, rain slicked the street. A black car waited, engine idling. He opened the back door, gestured for her to enter. Raven hesitated. If I go with you, will I come back? He met her eyes, expression unreadable. That depends on what kind of person you are. She climbed in. The door shut with the soft, final sound of a lock turning. As the city lights blurred past, Raven realized she wasn't a witness anymore. She was property of the world she'd spent her life cleaning around, but never touching. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the fear, a quiet fury began to burn. One that whispered she would find a way out, no matter who he was. When Raven woke, she didn't know what time it was. The light pouring through the glass walls was soft and gray, the kind that dulled the edges of everything. She lay on a leather couch, the blanket tucked around her too neatly for comfort. Her shoes were gone. Her wrists ached from how tightly she'd held herself during the drive. The penthouse was quiet. Too quiet. No voices, no hum of traffic. Just the faint ticking of a wall clock and her own breathing. She sat up slowly, her gaze sweeping the room. Clean lines, silver glass shadow. A world built on control. Her uniform was still stained from the night before. She smelled faintly of bleach and fear. Her cleaning cart was gone, along with every sign of the life she knew. She found the kitchen by following the smell of coffee. A cup already waited for her on the counter, steam curling upward like a signal. She didn't touch it. The man appeared moments later, as if summoned by her hesitation. Jae-won. He looked different in daylight. Less dangerous, but no less in control. His sleeves were rolled, veins visible along his forearms. There was no gun, but the quiet command in his presence was enough. You didn't sleep long, he said. I wasn't planning to, Raven replied. He studied her, unreadable. You're safe here. That what you tell all your prisoners? A faint smile touched his mouth. Only the ones who think they're free. She wanted to throw the cup at him, wanted to scream. Instead, she crossed her arms. Why am I here? He walked to a sleek black briefcase resting on the table, flipped it open, and withdrew an envelope. A transaction, he said simply. You saw something you shouldn't have. I'm offering you a way to forget it. He slid the envelope across the table. Inside, neat stacks of one. More money than she'd seen in her life. Her stomach twisted. You think I can be bought? I think everyone has a price. Not me. He tilted his head slightly. You work 3 jobs cleaning offices. You send money out of the country every month. Tell me again you don't have a price. Raven's throat tightened. You've been checking on me. I check on everyone in my house, he said. Especially the ones who interest me. Something in his tone made her skin prickle. Not flirtation. Curiosity. The kind a scientist might have before dissecting something fragile. She pushed the envelope back. Keep it. I don't want your money. I just want out. He regarded her for a long moment, the air between them dense with unsaid things. Then he said, You misunderstand. This isn't a gift. It's a debt you'll take to survive. If you don't accept my protection, you'll be dead before sunrise. Protection, she repeated, voice low. That's just another word for cage. He said nothing. The silence itself was power. He moved closer, his shadow falling over hers. "You'll stay here for now," he said finally. "No calls, no leaving. You'll have everything you need." "I don't want comfort," she shot back. "I want choices." For the first time, his mask slipped. Just a flicker, but she saw something. Surprise, maybe even respect. "You remind me of someone," he murmured. "Someone who used to think freedom was a choice." Raven straightened. "And what happened to her?" He looked away. She learned it wasn't. He left the room then, the sound of the door sliding shut too soft to match the finality of it. Raven stood alone, the envelope of money untouched on the table. Outside, the city stretched far below, vast, unreachable. She placed her palm against the cold glass, trying to steady her breath. She didn't know how long she stood there, staring at the skyline, trying to make sense of the man who'd both saved and stolen her life. But one thought repeated like a pulse. If he believed she could be owned, he didn't know her at all. By nightfall, she had tested every exit, every lock, every possibility. There were none. The penthouse was a fortress in the clouds. So she sat on the couch again, staring at the untouched envelope, and whispered to herself, "You can trap me here, but you can't make me yours." What she didn't see, what she couldn't know, was that across the room, through a pane of tinted glass, J1 stood watching her reflection. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. But his eyes, for the first time, betrayed something dangerously close to fascination. The days slipped by with the slow rhythm of captivity. Morning light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting soft lines across the marble. Raven had stopped counting the hours. The sun rose, the sun fell, and still she was here. Yet even in confinement, she studied everything. How he moved, what he didn't say, the weight that lived behind his silence. J1's world never truly slept. Men came and went, their suits crisp, their eyes sharp. They bowed, murmured reports, left without expression. Each time the elevator doors sealed, Raven felt a drop in air pressure, as if the penthouse itself was holding its breath. He never explained what they discussed. But sometimes, when the meetings ended, he would stand at the window with a glass of water and stare at the skyline until the city lights bled together. His reflection looked like a ghost, too solid to vanish, too tired to belong anywhere. One night she heard him leave around 2 a.m. When he returned near dawn, his jacket smelled faintly of antiseptic and hospital corridors. His movements were slower, deliberate. The next night he was gone again. Curiosity gnawed at her until she asked, "Where do you go?" He didn't look up from the tablet in his hands. "You ask too many questions. I just clean up after you. It helps to know what I'm cleaning." That made him glance at her, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Hospitals. My mother's there." She hesitated. "Is she sick?" He set the tablet down. "Dying. Slowly. And she still tells me to wear a tie." There was no emotion in his tone, but something flickered in his eyes. Grief wearing the mask of discipline. Raven wanted to say she was sorry, but the words felt too small. Instead, she turned back to the sink, rinsing out a cloth that didn't need rinsing. After he left for another meeting, she drifted toward his study. Dust coated the shelves. Papers lay in stacks, ignored. She told herself she was only cleaning, but curiosity guided her hands. On the desk sat a photo frame face down. She lifted it carefully. A girl smiled out, bright eyes, black hair, the same quiet sadness she saw in him. His sister, maybe. When she heard the elevator chime, she almost dropped it. He stepped into the room. "You shouldn't touch that," he said. "I was dusting." He took the photo from her hands, brushing the surface with his thumb. "She's gone." Raven met his gaze. "Your sister?" He nodded once. "She died because I hesitated. I don't hesitate anymore." For a long moment they just stood there. Two people who both understood loss, one hiding behind power, the other behind defiance. Later, when she lay awake on the couch, she realized she had stopped thinking of him only as her captor. He was something else now, still dangerous but achingly human, burdened by a grief he refused to show. And somehow, that made him harder to hate. The next morning, J1 left a folder on the coffee table. "I need this organized," he said. "My sister's records. You notice patterns others miss." Raven blinked at him. "You're trusting me with your sister's files?" "I'm testing you," he replied. Trust is another word for risk. The folder was chaos, receipts, letters, photographs. She spent hours sorting, cross-referencing dates, reading the margins of handwritten notes. The woman in the pictures was full of light. Nothing like the cold edges of J1's world. Raven could feel the love and guilt buried in every page. When he returned that evening, he watched her work silently. She explained her system, color-coding annotations, missing signatures that hinted at old betrayals. He listened, arms folded, expression unreadable. "You were right," she said quietly. "There's a pattern. Someone inside your circle hid transactions under her name." He arched a brow. "And you saw that in a few hours." "I spend my life noticing what rich men leave behind," she said. For a moment, his stare softened. "You've been invisible so long, you learned how to see everything. Someone has to." He stepped closer. "You should know, you just saved me a fortune." "I wasn't trying to," she said. "I just don't like mess." That earned the faintest laugh, his first. The sound startled them both. In the days that followed, he began to ask her opinion. Small things at first. How to read someone's body language in a meeting, whether a rival's apology felt sincere. She answered honestly, unafraid of offending him. He used her insights, and each time she was right, the circle around him tightened. Raven found herself moving freely through the penthouse now. The locks still clicked at night, but during the day she felt almost like an assistant rather than a captive. She even caught herself humming once while organizing his files. Freedom hadn't returned, but purpose had. When the next minor crisis came, a rival threatening to expose one of J1's operations. He used a detail she'd mentioned about delivery routes to trap the man in his own lie. The fallout was quiet, efficient, and when it was over, J1 simply said, "You see value where others don't." That night, fresh lilies appeared in the kitchen. No note, just the scent of acknowledgement. She smiled despite herself. And if you've been walking beside her through all of this, the fear, the strange spark of understanding, you already know she's not just surviving. She's learning the cost of being seen. Stories like hers live because people like us keep them breathing. Stay close. Subscribe. Help keep Raven's voice from vanishing into silence. Rain swept across the glass walls, blurring the skyline into silver haze. Raven was sorting another stack of her organized files when one sheet caught her eye. An old memo signed by a name she recognized from overheard conversations. Hansu. The ink was faint, but the transaction date aligned with the week J1's sister had died. A pit opened in her stomach. She waited until evening, when he returned from a meeting that left his jaw tight with exhaustion. "I found something," she said, holding out the file. He frowned. "What is it?" "Proof that your sister's death wasn't an accident. Someone inside set her up. Hansu's signature is on the payment order." He took the paper, reading in silence. The muscles in his face barely moved, but the air shifted, denser, darker. Finally he said, "You shouldn't have looked this deep. You told me to find patterns. I didn't tell you to dig up ghosts." She met his eyes. She deserves the truth. Something inside him cracked. He sank onto the edge of the desk, the file trembling slightly in his hand. "I've known for a long time," he admitted. "Could never prove it. Could never face it. My mother blames me. She thinks I led my sister into the life that killed her." Raven stepped closer. "And do you believe her?" He let out a slow breath. "Some nights, yes." The vulnerability in his voice cut through every wall she'd built. He wasn't the monster from that night in the office. He was a man trying to atone inside a kingdom made of glass and blood. "You carry too much," she whispered. He looked up. "And you carry everything alone." The silence stretched until it became fragile. When he finally spoke again, his tone was softer. "If I let you go now, they'll find you. But if I keep you here, I'll destroy what's left of you. Tell me, Raven, what would you choose?" She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure escape was the same thing as freedom. Outside, thunder rolled across the river, echoing through the glass. J1 turned toward the window, shoulders squared but heavy. "Hansu will pay for what he did," he said. "And I'll make sure my sister's name is clean." Raven watched him, her fear shifting into something dangerously close to trust. The cracks between them weren't weakness anymore. They were the start of something real, something that could destroy or redeem them both. And somewhere deep inside, she realized she wanted to see which one it would be. Raven had begun to think the silence meant safety. But silence in J1's world was never safety. It was the inhale before the next storm. The first sign came quietly. A new guard appeared by the elevator, one she didn't recognize. He avoided her eyes. The air felt heavier. That night, when she walked past the study, she caught Jae-won on the phone, his voice low, controlled. "She knows too much," someone said on the other end. "Even a ghost leaves footprints." Jae-won's answer was a murmur of steel. "Then we erase the ones following her, not her." When he ended the call, Raven stepped out from the shadow. "Was that about me?" His expression didn't change. "Yes." "Then tell me the truth, Jae-won. Am I your secret or your sin?" He looked at her for a long time, then said quietly, "Both." The next morning, the phone in her room rang once, twice, then stopped. She answered on the third. "Hello, Raven," said a man's voice she didn't know but somehow recognized. "I've heard the boss keeps you like a pet. Do you fetch too?" Her throat went dry. "Who is this?" "Han-soo. You remember the name." The sound of it snapped something inside her. "You killed that man," she said, voice shaking. "And soon, I'll fix the mistake your boss made by sparing you. Leave him, little janitor, or you'll both die for the same reason." Sentiment. Click. Silence again. When Jae-won found her pacing the living room, she didn't have to explain. He saw the fear written across her face and understood. "He called," she whispered. He reached for her phone, checked the log, jaw tightening. "He knows you're alive. That means he's already moving. What will you do?" "Remind him who he works for." But it wasn't that simple. The elders called a meeting 2 nights later. Raven wasn't invited, but she heard the aftermath through the walls when he returned. His voice, usually calm, was rough with fury. "They called you a liability," he told her. "They said a foreign woman has no place in our world. They want you gone. Immediately." She stared at him. "And you?" "I told them I'd burn the table before I let them decide who stays in my home." She'd never seen him so undone. Hair disheveled, knuckles bleeding where he'd slammed a wall. He was paying a price for protecting her, and the weight of it pressed down on her chest like guilt she didn't know how to carry. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stood by the window watching the city pulse beneath her, whispering to herself, "You're the reason he's falling." Behind her, Jae-won said softly, "If I lose everything, it will be my choice. Don't carry what isn't yours." She turned, tears glinting in the city light. "Then stop making me feel like I belong here." He looked at her for a long time before answering. "You do." It started with a flash of white, then a roar, then chaos. Raven was in the back seat of a car behind Jae-won's motorcade when the first explosion tore through the street. Fire bloomed upward, swallowing metal and screams. Her driver swore, jerking the wheel, but another blast followed. Smoke and glass rained down. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She shoved open the door, coughing, ducking under the hail of bullets. She knew these streets, the service tunnels, the shortcuts. She had cleaned them years ago. Every hidden door was etched in memory. Using an access hatch near a drain, she slipped underground, the sound of chaos muffled above. Her hands shook as she found the old pipe systems, twisted a valve, and rerouted the steam. Within seconds, boiling vapor burst through the manholes, cloaking the road in white. Confusion. Screams. She climbed up just in time to see Jae-won crawl from the wreckage, one hand pressed against a bleeding shoulder. She ran to him. "Raven, no," he barked, but she was already there, dragging him toward cover. They stumbled into an abandoned tea shop. She tore the curtain from its hooks and pressed it against his wound. "You should have run," he said hoarsely. "I told you I'm done running," she replied. He tried to laugh but coughed instead. "You're insane." "Alive," she corrected. "We both are. For now." Hours passed in that dark shop, filled with the drip of rain through holes in the ceiling. She worked in silence, her hands steady even as tears threatened to fall. When she finally looked up, his eyes were open, soft. "Why did you come for me?" he asked quietly. "Because you didn't kill me when you should have," she said. "Because you made me believe there's something worth saving in you." He smiled faintly. "You shouldn't love me." "I don't," she lied. But they both knew she did. When the sirens faded and dawn broke over the wreckage, Jae-won's people found them. They lifted him away, and as she watched him disappear into the safety of his own world, Raven realized she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She hadn't just saved the boss. She'd saved the man. Jae-won's recovery was slow, marked by silence and shadow. He moved through the penthouse like a ghost, bruised but breathing. Raven tended to him, though neither spoke of that night. Until one morning he said, "It ends today." She looked up from the breakfast table. "What does this life?" He'd arranged a meeting, one final confrontation. The elders, Han-soo, every remnant of the old order. He planned to end it cleanly, even if it meant walking into a lion's den. "Don't go," she said. "You're walking into a trap." "I've lived in one for years," he replied. "It's time to break the bars." She followed him anyway, waiting outside the building as thunderclouds gathered. Inside, words were exchanged, accusations flung like knives. Then silence. When the doors opened, Hansu didn't walk out. Jae-won did, bloodless and calm, the weight of centuries lifted from his shoulders. "It's done," he said simply. "The Soul Dragon is under new leadership. A cleaner one. And Hansu? Gone." She didn't ask how. She didn't need to. That night, they packed the few things they owned. The penthouse, once a gilded cage, felt hollow. When they stepped into the elevator, he reached for her hand. "No more debts," he said. "No more dragons," she answered. They disappeared into the dark, leaving an empire behind and taking with them only the fragile truth that love could survive even this. New York smelled of rain and roasted chestnuts, not blood. The mornings were quieter here. Raven woke early, brewing coffee as sunlight filled their apartment. Jae, no longer Jae-won, sat at the table, reading the news. Their daughter, Mina, built towers out of cereal boxes on the floor. The sound of laughter replaced the hum of danger. The scars on his hands were fading, but she still traced them sometimes, reminders of the man he used to be. Their company, Scott and Lee Security, had become one of the most trusted private firms in the city. They protected what others couldn't. It was ironic, she thought. A mafia boss turned protector. A janitor turned partner. One evening, after putting Mina to bed, Raven stood by the window. The skyline shimmered, distant and forgiving. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The chaos," he said, joining her. "Sometimes. It made me feel alive. And now," he looked at her, eyes soft with something unguarded. "Now I feel human." She smiled. "That's better than alive." He nodded. "We bought peace with everything we had. Seems like a fair trade." Outside, the city pulsed. Inside, their hearts finally rested. And for those who had followed their story, the witnesses, the dreamers, the ones who still believe love can crawl out of darkness, Raven's voice would whisper across the silence. "Stay. Don't just watch from the edge. Stories like ours only live when someone cares enough to keep them breathing. Subscribe. Not for us, for every broken soul who still believes in second chances."